Hey everyone, welcome back to Exceptional Relationships. I'm your host, Jason Safford, founder of Exceptional Results Now, here with my fabulous co-host, Ronique
Hi.
Clarke. Ronique,
Hi. Hi, darling.
how are you doing?
What up? What is going on?
So you're looking extra fabulous this morning, and for all of our
You're looking
listeners,
quite handsome over there as well.
oh, well, thank you. Thank you. And for all of our listeners, this is another episode of Exceptional Relationships with Jason and Ronique. And today we're talking about what goes without saying.
Exactly.
And I am curious, Ronique, the intentions of every episode are obviously to look
Mhm.
at some of the fundamental things within relationships. But in this
Mhm.
case, saying what goes without saying, we're talking about intuition.
Yes.
So, how do you get to this place of intuition where you can figure out what goes without saying?
Mm. Well, yes. Again, we have to reiterate knowledge of self and awareness of self. And when you are aware of yourself, you are aware of others.
Hmm.
So when you come across people and you see the way they carry themselves, certain things you will already pick up on.
Hmm.
Because since you are aware of yourself, you have a heightened awareness of yourself, you have a heightened awareness of other people. So once you see certain things happening around you, you are able to decipher, okay, who is genuine, who's not genuine, who's only around me just for what I have, who's only around me for me. All those things.
I want to bring up a really important part in what you're saying is the fact that you've got to have awareness of yourself. And that's a
Wow.
real challenge for a lot of people.
Mhm.
And in terms of what goes without saying, one of the things that I hear is
Mhm.
that the first challenge is what goes without saying with you. So
Exactly.
before you even get into intuition with other people, you've got to have an intuition into your own emotional state, your own thoughts in terms of, whether or not you're thinking positive or negative
Exactly.
about the information that's coming at you. So
Mhm.
there are a lot of things that when you are, trying to establish or you're in a relationship with somebody else
Yeah.
and you're getting into boundaries and
Yes.
rules
Mhm.
and what should and should not be,
Mhm.
all these things that um, people talk about, the more you figure out, who you are,
Yeah.
that you have boundaries and barriers. But
Mhm.
part of the issue is that you don't necessarily know how to establish those things unless you've figured it out for yourself. And the problem
Exactly.
is,
Mhm.
and I'm sorry, but I just have to, sort of say that I already see the problem is that it's very easy for you to assume that it goes without saying once you become familiar with yourself.
That is very true. And you know what happened? Another thing too, a lot of people love to announce certain things.
Mm-hmm.
People love to say that, oh, I am this, I am that, I'm this kind of a person, I'm that kind of a person. When the way you carry yourself, the way you carry yourself and the way you interact with people and the way you treat yourself and the way how you treat others, that is indication enough for other
Mm-hmm.
people to really see the sort of person you are. So
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to announce to anybody that you are a specific way. You all you need to do is let your actions show. Let who you are shine through your actions, right? And that is how people see who you are.
That's something that I think is really important to point out, that
Mhm.
actions not only speak louder than words, but
Mhm.
again, in terms of what goes without saying, if
Mhm.
you feel that you need to say something to
Mhm.
validate yourself to other people,
Yep.
Now you've got a double whammy because now you've got to live up to other people's expectations of what you
Which are
just said.
exactly.
And they may be different than what you think of yourself.
Oh yes, and we see this happen all the time.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people will say that they're this way, they're that way, they're such a good person, they're so this, they're so that. Oh my goodness, they exalt themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, when you exalt yourself, you have to make sure the actions are there to back up what you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
because nobody wants to be around anybody who just talks about they're so this and they're so that, and there is the actions don't corroborate what you are saying.
Right.
Right? So what you don't have to say anything. You don't have to say that you're so this and you're so that. Let action show. Let people experience it for themselves.
Why do you
You
think
know
that?
who you are. You
Yeah.
know who you are, so you conduct yourself accordingly.
Now let's get into this. Why do you think people feel a need to validate themselves so much?
Insecurity.
Okay. And what are they
Insecurity.
insecure of? Where is that insecurity coming from?
It can come from anything. It can come from anything. It can come from past traumas. It can come from long time childhood experiences. It can come through that that one that one little girlfriend or that one little boyfriend you had years ago or some time ago in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, who you had a bad experience with, and people feel as if, oh, you need to protect yourself from the rest of the world, so you have to put up walls.
Yeah.
It depends. It varies with each person. So a lot of people have to look at where these things are coming from and really tackle it and really deal with it, because at the end of the day, those things are not exactly conducive to you having a healthy relationship with anybody.
Yeah.
Not even yourself.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I don't.
Yeah. And it brings up another point we talked about in the past, manifestation.
Yes.
And now we're talking about what goes without saying, which is kind of the anti-manifestation in the sense that your actions really do the speaking for you. But that's a way to manifest. In other words, the more aligned you are between your thoughts and actions,
Yes.
the manifestation isn't so much speaking it into the universe with your words, it's speaking it into the universe with your actions.
With your actions, exactly.
And your overall body language.
Ah,
And so
exactly.
this goes back to, so when somebody's validating themselves, they're
Mhm.
actually doing the opposite of manifesting, even though I think that their intention is to manifest.
Yes.
And when we think about that from the, I mean, in your experience, when people come to you and they say things like, I'm a great catch. How do you receive that, and how do you return it to them in a constructive way?
Really? That is the first thing I said. Really? You really asking me that? First of all, no. If you are a great catch, let your actions show. I should be able to see that you are a great catch.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to say anything to me about you. You don't have to announce it to me. You don't have to announce it to anybody. How you treat me and how you treat the other people around you, as well as how you treat yourself, is indication enough to me to say, oh, this person's a great catch. Yeah, I have to shape up, and I have to come with my A game, because this whoever the person is they're moving in a certain way where it demands that sort of acknowledgement.
Yeah. So
You know what I mean?
yeah, so really it's about humility and kindness.
Yes.
And these two things, in terms of what goes without saying, these are the things that really allow other people to become attracted to you.
Exactly.
The more that you don't feel a need to validate yourself or say something, but you allow things to happen through humility and kindness.
Yes.
These are the things. And so does that make you more vulnerable by choosing to be, humble and kind?
Vulnerable, yes, because a lot of times you let the bad in with the good. But at the end of the day, it's all a human experience. And at the end of the day, there are always lessons to be learned. So yes, it's going to open you up to negative as well as positive, but don't think of it as something bad or
Mhm.
something you have to shield yourself off from.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So because humility is really needed in this world, and kindness is really needed, and love is really needed in this world as well, most
Yeah.
importantly. So
It
as
brings up another point, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I'm thinking about it from you just said how humanity needs
yeah,
this, and that is something that brings up the idea that we don't give ourselves credit for being able to make mistakes.
yeah,
And I mean, you yourself, you're an amazing, person in terms of being able to help people through their challenges and their relationships, and explain to them how important love is.
yeah.
But what I think, for our listeners, I'm just thinking about this. How do they learn to understand that making mistakes is not only a good thing, but it's acceptable, and that's part of what goes without saying?
Exactly, because we are not, none of us are God, and whatever God or whatever higher being you choose to believe in, we are not that. We are only human. We are going to make mistakes. We are flawed.
Hmm.
So as long as we embrace that and embrace the fact that yes, we are going to make mistakes along the way, but as long as we learn from them, that is that is how we evolve. That's how we grow, and that is how we elevate ourselves into higher versions of ourselves. You
Hmm.
know, so
Well, and also it helps us to recognize, what truly is the greatest power of being human.
ah,
And I think that for our listeners, that's one of the things that they're looking for, is understanding of, what really is the power and the value of being human, and having humanity.
yes, having humanity is making mistakes and being wrong. And once you learn those lessons from being wrong, you are able to pass on that knowledge and pass on that wisdom to somebody else who might eventually come across that situation. They are going to make their own mistakes as well. Don't get me wrong. But once they learn certain lessons, they are able to impart that knowledge and impart that wisdom to other people. And that's how everything goes. We we learn, we make mistakes, we learn again, and we use that knowledge and we impart it to the rest of us, the rest of the people around us, so they can learn and they can grow and they can make their mistakes as well, and they can learn their lessons and they can elevate themselves and they can evolve into higher versions of themselves as well. It's all about evolution.
So
Mhm.
it goes without saying then that the more willing you are to be vulnerable, be
Yep.
humble and kind,
Hmm.
and share your mistakes and your lessons with others with a great deal of love,
Yes.
and provide that love, that care for other human beings in an unselfish way,
Yes.
that this is really what allows, an exceptional relationship to form.
Exactly. And that is why we're here.
There you go. And I think that it goes without saying that part of our, teamwork here in our relationship is being able to share with our listeners, as we're learning, that uh, learning within yourself,
Mm-hmm.
to allow forgiveness and become more humble in terms of what your talents are,
Yes,
your gifts, as well as your mistakes,
exactly.
and share both willingly.
Yep, that's true.
So let's just take a left turn here, and I'm going to ask you, why is it so hard for people to embrace this very simple concept?
Boy, it varies with each person. It varies with, it comes down to maybe the way how they were raised, the way they, what their parents taught them and what their parents taught them, how the sort of people that they're hanging out around. You never can tell. Everybody has certain reasons, and usually when you really come down to the core root of it, it's some trauma. It's some kind of situation that happened in the past that truly affected them deeply, that they feel as if they need to hold back, and it's all out of fear. So what we need to understand as individuals is that fear hinders a lot of things. Yes, you're going to get hurt, and that is a part of the human experience as well. I don't think any of us has ever gone through life gone through our childhood without falling down and scraping a knee or two knees. It's gonna happen. I know I have my fair share of scraped knees, but what happens is we have the lessons from those mistakes, we have the lessons from those injuries, and we are able to say, all right, we scraped our knee once, so we know we have to sort of slow down a little bit when we're running, kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be, it's not going to always be easy, and that is a part of being human. As honest, it's not going to be easy, but at least when you look at certain things with a level of humility and kindness and love, you're able to find lessons in the mistakes. And when you do that, you gain knowledge. And when you have that knowledge, don't keep it to yourself. Pass it on.
And for people who keep that knowledge and they sort of hold everything inside, obviously, there are a lot of things that aren't going without saying. They're sort of, expecting that
Yeah.
other people understand something that they can't, because they're holding on to everything. They're not
Yeah.
communicating. And it shows in their body language, it shows in their overall mentality.
Yeah.
Um, so what can someone like that do to, slowly release, let go? I mean, it's obvious that it's not easy to let go for a lot of people, especially when it
It's
comes to
true.
trauma.
It's
Where
true.
where is that fear coming from? Why is it so hard to let go?
Well, maybe they just might not have that person, that support system there to really let it out. And when it comes down to it, it's really something within themselves that they have to be brave and let it out. Because usually it's a fear of rejection and a fear of something else happening as a result of letting go and letting letting go of whatever it is.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's all about fear, and we need to get over that fear, and we need to live in humility and love and kindness, and make our mistakes, because we're all going to do it. But when we learn from those mistakes, we impart that knowledge to other people.
You know, um, that point to me is really, really important, because I think that one of the things that we personally go through, each of us, is eventually getting to a point where we understand how our brain really works.
That's for sure.
And that's not easy. In other words, most of us go through life and we just go about our days and things come at us, and we don't necessarily understand how to process things and
Yeah.
not react right away. So
Yeah.
part of our issue with trauma is that it comes from a place deep within us.
Yes.
And you'll hear some people, say that, we have a, 6 million-year-old brain or 33 million year old brain. It doesn't matter. The
Mhm.
human species has been around for a long time. And we have these different areas of our brain. There's the conscious, subconscious, and the unconscious.
Exactly.
And what we don't recognize, what goes without saying, is our unconscious brain. Our unconscious brain is doing so many things for us. We don't realize that our unconscious brain is controlling all of our organs and functionality and making sure that certain things are going on, because those are things that we, literally take for granted.
That's true.
That it's an area of our brain that's doing that. And that same area is responsible for something that we learn, very early in our lives in terms of science, which is fight or flight.
Yep, that is true.
And so trauma is carried there. And for a lot of people, the reason, that they, probably have a hard time letting go is because it's deep in that unconscious area. And then their subconscious is kind of looking at triggers.
Yes.
To work between the conscious and the unconscious, and the subconscious is kind of like saying, hey, wait a second, this seems like something that I've been through before, let me run, or let me fight. And depending on your state of mind, your mindset, that's really whether or not you're going to have the confidence to fight, or you're going to have the lack of confidence and flee.
Exactly. And by the way, it's all starts within us.
Yeah.
As everything goes back to something where we have to start from within, and then we have to work our way outward.
And the other side of this, is really about, separating your mind from your heart. So I just talked about the, the conscious, subconscious, and unconscious, but now how do you separate that from the feelings in your heart that we're also afraid of? So for a lot of people, when you get that feeling of butterflies, okay, it's such an uncomfortable feeling that we don't look at that feeling as a positive. We look at it as a negative because it's uncomfortable. It's not something we normally experience, right? And the same thing with our stomach. When we get that, pit in our stomach, that something just feels bad, we don't embrace that. And these are things that go without saying.
Exactly.
But we don't acknowledge them. Why not?
Like I said, it varies with each person. It varies with each person. But at the end of the day, regardless of what the situation is, it's something that we all have to tackle, because we all have it. We all have it. I have a little mantra. If the mind says something and the heart does something else, follow your mind. Follow your mind. Why? Because once you follow your mind, the heart will follow.
Now, why do you go that way rather than follow your heart?
Because if you follow your heart, then your mind might not necessarily follow. And there's always going to be some sort of conflict there. But if you follow your mind, heart will always follow. Always.
Well, that sounds like there could be a conflict. Why does the heart always follow the mind? I'm fascinated by that, because, one of the things that we learn is that, people oftentimes, are stuck in their own head, and they don't know how to follow their heart. But you're saying that, use your mind over your heart.
Well, in certain situations, yes. That is just me.
Okay.
A lot of people will follow their hearts and it works. Some people it doesn't. It doesn't work for me. So what you find is that overall, you have to find a situation where the mind and the heart.
Well, yeah, I think that's
the same level.
Right, and I think that's what I'm trying to get to with you, is that, if they're not in alignment, then obviously there's a conversation that needs to go on.
Exactly.
And
so there always has to be a situation where, if it's, think of it as a scale, right? Mind, heart, mind, heart, right? So if you find that one is sort of going the others like that, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be some semblance of conflict, right? But if you find a situation where it's almost level, it might not be all the way, but it's almost level.
Mm-hmm.
That's that is the choice.
Okay, so now I understand. So you're not saying always choose your mind over your heart. What you're saying is that whenever there's a 50-50 split, in other
Yes.
words, they're somewhat in alignment, but there are little details that,
The little details that
right,
is sort of like a little bit off. So it's like, so
right. And so what it really sounds like, and this is sort of, I'm going to flip this on you. What it really sounds like is that, when the mind and the heart, are, not in complete alignment, you need to have a conversation with yourself. And
yes,
what you're saying is you need to go into your mind.
yes.
And that's where what goes without saying is
Hmm.
that you need to meditate on it a little bit more.
Exactly.
Okay. So now I got you. And what we're really getting into is the spirit.
Exactly.
So
And that's something where it all starts from within.
right. Okay. So this gets into a third area, which is, I think for our listeners, not to confuse everybody, but you have mind, body, which is the heart, and spirit.
Spirit, yes.
And the difference between the mind, heart, and spirit is obviously that the mind is your logical and the
Yes.
heart is your passion,
Yep.
but your spirit is your purpose.
Yeah.
And when you're able to, look at, okay, the mind and the heart are in conflict over each other, there's something not right there. You need to
Yeah.
step back and you read and see again. This is where it goes without saying
Yep.
that, somebody would
The
automatically
tiebreaker.
assume this, but
Hmm.
the reality is that the tiebreaker always goes to your spirit.
Exactly.
What's in
So
your
when you're
spirit,
going into conflict, you have to go within it. You have to go into your spirit. And
right?
if your spirit, if you are meditating and your spirit says yes, your spirit says one way,
Right. That's the way you
your
follow.
spirit says heart, follow
Yes.
your heart. If your
Right.
spirit says follow your mind, you follow your mind.
There you go. There you
So
go.
yeah, you're going to have all sorts of situations. You're gonna have situations where the mind and the heart won't always align, but once you go to the tiebreaker, which is the spirit, the
Hmm.
spirit will always lead you right.
And I think that that's where, again, for our listeners, what comes out of this conversation for me is
Mhm.
that the problem with what goes without saying is that we don't align ourselves in
That's true.
terms of our values and our spirit.
That is true.
And that's one of the biggest issues in relationships is that what goes without saying is that you should really start, and we've talked about this before in terms of
Yeah.
your intentions and
Yes.
sharing your values and what makes up your spirit.
Yep. That's true.
Because we're individuals, we have our own hearts, we have our own minds, but
Hmm.
where we're all universal is in our spirit. It's
Yes.
just the
Yeah.
different values
Hmm.
that we need to bring to the table and say, hey, look, if this is what you value and this is what I value, we need to put those things on the table so we recognize
Exactly.
our spirits are aligned in terms of being focused on being one.
Yes. And
But
if common ground, you can find a
right,
common ground where, in terms, from a spiritual standpoint.
right, okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
So okay, last question for you, and this is really
Yeah.
just sort of thinking about what our listeners would want to hear.
Yeah.
How do you let somebody know without saying it that you feel within them there's a conflict that they need to address
Without saying,
without saying it? It's something that goes
without
without
saying,
saying. Yeah.
something that goes without saying, body language.
Okay.
Body language number one. And the way you interact with this person.
Hmm.
And then they will pick up that something is wrong
Yeah. Yeah.
without you even having to say. So And thing about his body language actually comes from the spirit, because the spirit doesn't lie.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? The way how we carry ourselves in terms of body language, in terms of other interact with other people, that is who we truly are. You know what I mean? So that will go without saying. That particular thing will go without saying. You will pick up on body language, and again, how you pick up on body language is how you know how aware you are of yourself,
Yeah, yeah,
how aware you are of your own body language, and how you carry yourself to other people in terms of in front of other people, and how you interact with other people. Once you're aware of that, you are aware of everything that is going on around you, so you are able to communicate certain things without even saying a word.
and I receive that as acknowledgement.
Yes.
And it's the fact that when people say certain things that don't align with you, or you feel that they're not in alignment, with themselves,
Yeah.
you acknowledge them differently,
Exactly.
and you acknowledge their message or what they're saying, in um, a different way than probably they expect you to.
Oh yes.
And so therefore, it's really about, the uh, transference of energy
Yep.
between the two people not being in alignment. So it's obviously going to cause some type of conflict.
That is true.
And I think that, ending on the note of what goes without saying,
Hmm.
our biggest challenge in relationships is recognizing that oftentimes the conflict that we have with other people is a mirror of the conflict that we have within ourselves.
Ourselves. Exactly. Yep. 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 That is so true. And
Awesome.
again, it all starts within us.
We're
It
right
all
back to that same place, aren't we?
Yes.
So, so is there
Course.
is there anything that you think our listeners need to hear before we sign off in terms of today's episode and what goes without saying?
What goes without saying? Carry us. If you know that you are a specific way, carry yourself accordingly. You don't have to announce it to the world. People will see it. People will acknowledge it through your mannerisms, through your body language, how you interact with others, how you treat others, how you treat yourself. People, other people around you will acknowledge the fact that you are this way. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to say a word. Certain things just goes without saying if that is what is in you, if that is what is in your spirit, that's what's in your soul, that's what is in your mind, that's what's in your heart. That will show.
And
You
I
don't
think
have to.
that it goes without saying that our listeners should know that we love them very much, care about
Yeah.
them deeply. And, as always, Ronique, um, my gratitude for you and
Yes.
being able to do this show with you.
Yeah.
Lots of love and light to everyone.
Yes. Lots of love and light. Mwah.
Take care.